right, welcome back. Fifth Street Sports Unhinged.
Overtime.
I'm going to call this one. No radio.
Unfiltered.
We're done with the network right now, so no holds barred. Anything goes. We got Oklahoma Brian on the phone with us still, and or on the guest line, the box, whatever the heck it is.
By the way, real quick, I have to ask something. Brian, are you there? Brian? Yes. Are you sitting there in Oklahoma? We got these three guys in Las Vegas, and you're sitting there. Are you screaming at your microphone and your monitor, just saying, "I want to say something"? Those guys are full of. Are you like you got to be sitting there going crazy, sitting there from a remote? Am I right?
I'm usually laughing pretty hard and hoping they don't ask me a question while I'm laughing. I gotta get it together before you guys throw it to me. The trying to do the analytics on the menstrual cycle.
Oh,
that was
wow.
Yeah.
I was really praying you guys would not ask me a question about that.
I have a funny story. Nolan, you were talking about me. You're calling me a misogynistic pig. You're probably right on both those accounts.
Yeah, I know you.
When I was doing Fox Football Friday and Fox Football Phone-In on Fox, this is back, 2007, 8. One of the things about doing that show with them is me and my radio partner at the time required that, so they did a TV show of our radio show, basically, that we have some creative control over the content of the show. Because it's Fox, and, they'll do whatever they want to. God, we'll probably get sued from this, but anyway. So one of the things we said is, we really don't want to talk about women's football.
Yeah, Michael Cohen is available, by the way.
Yeah, Stephen, right? Not because women's football is terrible. And I'll say it again. It's not a thing I really follow or like that much. But I have ultimate respect for these women as athletes. They're great athletes. So no disrespect there. But we didn't really want to cover it. Not when you've got the Premier League and you've got the European and you've got the Champions League and the Europa League and all these other sort of really top level football going on. I don't want to talk about women's football. It's just not. I don't follow it. It's not interesting to me. So Fox pretty much respected that, but they just closed a big rights deal for the Women's World Cup back then. So they snuck a guest into us, sort of backdoored this guest in for the show, who was the team doctor for the U.S. soccer and the U.S. women's team, and they wanted us to talk about injuries. It was just bizarre. It was a way to kind of sneak in, Of course, we cottoned onto this pretty quickly. So we had the doctor on, and he was a very boring, very nice gentleman, I might add, but very stuffy, rather doctorish.
He's a doctor.
Yes, Dr. Mandelbaum. I had Dr. Mandelbaum on. Of course, we were the only show that Fox did where they had one of the few shows they did where they actually had a lawyer in a booth with a big red button. So we had Dr. Mandelbaum on, and I had to ask him some questions. I said, well, Dr. Mandelbaum, you are the team doctor of the U.S. soccer, and in your job you see, players and you deal with all their injuries. Yes. So you do this to both the men's team and the women's team, right? Yes, of course.
Yes, yeah.
So I said, along those lines, you get to go into the locker room and stuff after the game, and you get to, talk to the players and check them out and everything. Well, yes, of course. That's my job as a doctor. So you've basically seen all these players, haven't you? He goes, well, yes. I go, so of the women's team, which ones have the nicest swingers? So, needless to say, we never had Dr. Mandelbaum on again. Thank goodness. But that's my little story of my misogynistic self. Look, I think that to bring this back to what we were talking about before we were interrupted.
I rest my case.
Before we were interrupted. I think that this integrity fee is a joke. It's a shakedown. It's the ultimate shakedown. If these people had been pushing for legalized sports betting for the last 10 years, saying, we really want this, we think this is great for the sport, for our brand, we think this is great for our intellectual property, we want to have all these people enjoying our intellectual property from a completely new angle, from the sports betting angle, Congress, please legalize this, blah, blah, blah. If they'd done that 10, 15 years ago, I wouldn't be up in arms about it. But these bastards are the people that fought this tooth and nail, caused an entire industry, not just sports betting, folks. The entire poker industry was destroyed by these bastards. through the UIGEA, through their pressuring the Justice Department, through their direct opposition. If the NFL had come out in favor of online poker and online betting, we wouldn't have had this entire poker meltdown that we had all these years ago. They are responsible for it more than anybody else because they are the money power in the hallowed halls of Washington. For these SOBs to all of a sudden decide that now they want a piece of the action because they lost in the long run, it's hypocrisy of the worst sort.
It is. And I think that they're getting, that their ratings are going to go up automatically because there's legalized gambling. They should be happy with that. They're getting, a lot more people are going to watch these games and be interested because of the fantasy leagues, the legalized gambling. It's just driving people in. They should be very happy. They should be very happy.
Skin in the game rather than just a beer on Saturday or Sunday.
All right, let me just, gentlemen, here's the issue. Here's the problem with what you just said. I agree with everything you absolutely said, but now you need to come back to reality. Come back to planet Earth. All right? Do you understand that we're talking about billions of dollars with a B? With there's billions of dollars at stake. And you don't think that 32 NFL owners who don't give a shit about people, about their players, because, by the way, CTE, do you think they care about the players? Do you think they care about anything? Do you really think so? Show me the evidence. No, they don't care about anything other than MEMONEY. So now, let's operate from a position of reality instead of dream ideology and what you call hypocrisy. The NFL is going to want a piece of everything that exist. They get the television commercials. They get the networks. They get every single thing. It's the tentacles of capitalism drawing in on the resources that are available. And for them not. By the way, I'm not suggesting that I am a defender of what the NFL owners are doing. To the contrary, I think they're disgraceful. They have an intellectual. They have a monopoly on the public's allegiance, attention, loyalty, and essentially even the consciousness of cities. If you live in, can I curse?
Yeah.
If you live in fucking Baltimore, what do you have to cheer for? Other than the Ravens or the Orioles. Right. For Christ's sakes, have you ever been to Baltimore? Oh. Seriously? Have you ever been there?
Yeah.
You got nothing, man.
Yeah, but
so you cheer for the Orioles? Wait a minute. I'm on a roll here. No, I'm like John Belushi in Animal House.
Roll away.
The Germans bombed Pearl Harbor. Let me finish my point, sir. All right? Let me just say, you guys are naive. You're foolish to think that the NFL is not, and the other four leagues are not going to try to get a piece of the action. So now let's talk about it from a position of reality. Yeah, ideologically, it's so hypocritical. Yes, it's so wrong. Yeah, but let's get, this is the real world.
Okay, all right.
But let me ask you,
hold on. Let's talk reality then, okay? Let's talk reality. If I have an army of 500 people guarding my store, and some mafia guy comes up to me and says, "Hey, if you pay me $50 a month, I'll, nothing's going to happen." I'm like, "Hey, mate, nothing's happening anyway. All right, you and who army's going to beat me?" It's too late. The ship has already sailed. The Supreme Court's going to legalize sports betting on a state-by-state basis, no matter what the NFL do. They are late to the party. They have no leverage whatsoever anymore in this situation.
They're the NFL.
The NFL,
they have no leverage.
Listen,
what leverage do they have?
They have no leverage.
What leverage do they have?
When it comes to gambling, that milk's all over the floor already. They've been betting NFL since the beginning. I'm sorry about that.
I tell them to blow it out their ass.
All right, Brian, prove these guys wrong. Set them straight, please.
Yeah, I totally agree with everything you guys are saying.
Oh, wait a minute, you guys! No!
What are you, Adam Silver? Yeah.
No, you're both right. The horse is out of the barn, so to speak. But the NFL is going to, and the NBA, who's really leading this effort, their goal, as far as I can tell from what I've read, is they're trying to introduce a piece of legislation that would, be passed by Congress that would basically force the states to have to allocate a certain amount of the handle back to the leagues that are being bet on. I think it's absurd, and hopefully that the states, that the states have a pretty significant lobby in this. I mean, they're the ones that have to approve this on a
New Jersey already told me to go to
jurisdictional
hell.
basis.
Brian, excuse me for a
Sorry?
second. Brian, hear me out, please. I'm going to ask you a very pointed, straight question. I understand why you, as a professional sports bettor, object to this. Yes, I get that. However, that being said, why are you saying that the leagues are not entitled? I mean, this is their show. This is what they do. They spend a lot of money putting these games on,
For which they make a lot of
yes,
money.
agreed. But why? Some teams do lose money. By the way, that is a fact. Some teams do lose money. I would like to know why you think, Brian, that they're not entitled to what seems to be a minuscule percentage of the drop.
It's not minuscule. And where does it end? I mean, are we going to start having to are we going to start having to write a check to the NBA because we're talking about them? I mean,
Yep.
I mean,
Good point.
they're going to say, hey, guys, you couldn't do this show and talk about us if we didn't have this incredible game.
Hey.
So here's the address. Make sure you send us a check each week or don't talk about it. So it's
Brian,
silly.
you and I had a conversation a few days ago where you had a great idea for something that you wanted to do, but it would have involved pulling archival game footage going back 20, 30 years or 10 years or 5 years. And I said to you,
Sure.
we can't do that because the rights to that broadcast are owned by the NBA or the NFL or whatever the sports league is. You can only really use that sort of stuff in the context of a live news broadcast because it's news. But they own that. That's theirs. No one's saying it's not theirs. But this has nothing to do with them. This is like going to an office, people sitting around the water cooler talking about the NBA game, and Adam Silver standing behind the cooler saying, all right, guys, you're talking about the game. $5 from each of you. Where's my $5?
No
Real
shit.
quick, Nick, real quick. Here's the counter argument to that. You're some sports book in Costa Rica or the Dominican Republic or some Caribbean whatever, and they're using the NFL, the NBA, the NHL, the Major League Baseball. They're using those call letters to draw money, to attract customers, to get people to deposit, to bet, to take a percentage, to essentially profit. They are profiting from the 4 sports leagues. If it weren't for the sports leagues, there would be Zippo. There'd be nothing. And so is it really wrong for the sports for the sports leagues who put on a hell of a circus to not say, hey, we want a little piece of the pie?
Yes, it is entirely wrong because they get paid for their product. They market their product. Their product is driven by television ratings and sponsorship and television money. And that is once it's hit the tube, it is just something that you've seen. There's nothing to stop your exercise of free speech or free commerce. You're not trading on their trademark. You're just trading.
You aren't?
No, you're not saying
You're putting the Baltimore Ravens playing the Cincinnati Bengals up. That is those are two
and
NFL
it could
teams.
be the
and
could be
this-
the lower
am I-
Manhattan
Wait a minute.
fifth
Wait a minute. This is
against
the important point.
Who cares?
You're not infringing on when you're
No.
putting the Cincinnati Bengals and the Baltimore Ravens. You're not infringing on a part of trademark.
If you were infringing,
If you own the Baltimore Ravens, you're not pissed that somebody's making
you
money
would think
off that.
they would have sued already if that was it. Now you can't use the word Super Bowl, but you can use these other things as a fair use, common use law that protects your right to do that.
But
They
the
don't have
bettor's
any
not, but the bettor's not going to pay for if this increase goes through. The bettor doesn't pay for it. Maybe in comps because they're going to still charge $1.10. You know what I mean? The sports books on the bet they're not going to charge $1.11 because
They drive the savvy sports books offshore.
No, the
Savvy
sports
bet-
books are going to now. The only thing that'll hurt with the sports books are, let's say you're a sports book in Michigan, and now you got to pay this 1% fee from all your customers that are betting WNBA. You're just not going to have the room to give them comps. Let's say you were giving them comps for for drinks or food in your casino. You're not going to be able to give that because the NBA took that.
Hey, bill it to Roger Goodell.
All right.
See, you
So-
can't charge
I think that's-
$1.11, or else another guy will find a local bookmaker and pay $1.10.
It's a great
off the
point,
books.
and put the camera on me. Put the camera on me because I want the show here. I want the lightning. Ah! The lightning. Brian, I mean, I'm coming to you next on this. Okay, I'm coming to you next. So you're on the on deck circle, and I've got the
I'm
bat.
ready.
I've got the bat. I'm getting ready to swing, and I'm getting ready to hit it
By
out
the
of the
way, though,
park. Okay,
Brian-
you watch You watch this. Here's the situation. Okay, DFS, Daily Fantasy Sports, the precursor essentially to professional sports gambling, right?
Right.
Which the
Right?
NBA, NFL
Yes.
owns
No,
a piece.
I understand all the politics. I don't like it any more than you do. What I'm suggesting to you is the pro sports leagues wanted a piece of the action, rightfully so. Rightfully so with DFS, because DFS was a game changer. It's changing the way people are watching the game. Are you kidding me? Why wouldn't every single NFL and whatever team not want a little piece of that action? They're changing the fundamental way people are watching the game. Are you kidding me? So are not they? I'm not saying they're entitled, but are they at least entitled to ask and request and demand a percentage?
No.
As when we're talking about turning the key on legalized sports wagering, shouldn't they be entitled to 1% because that is because that's the Cincinnati Bengals, that's the Baltimore Ravens, that's the whatever team, and you're betting on them because that's their intellectual property and that's the product they put on.
No, absolutely not. They should be happy that more people are going to watch their games because they can bet on them.
Look at the WNBA draft
Well, I agree.
ratings. I mean, it's a great example.
They
The
should be
WNBA.
happy.
No one gives a damn about that, but if you can bet on it, yeah, people will
absolutely.
watch it.
All right, Brian, come to our rescue again. I'm getting beat up here.
By the way, why do you think people in England like the NFL?
I'm sure.
'Cause they like to bet
I don't
on
just,
it.
Wait a minute. You just, all right. I'm gonna tear this whole. I just want to go around. I just want to
You
scream
need
and
to
tear
calm-
everything
you
up.
need to calm the
I'm
hell
gonna
down
tear
is what
everything
you
up.
need to
I'm
do.
about to go on a rant. Maybe before I do, Brian.
Man,
I don't have a
Brian,
defibrillator
Brian's
here.
on. Brian,
Calm down.
You're on.
no,
Cue.
but you,
Brian. Ah!
I wish I could match your enthusiasm.
Yes, you can.
He's just a shill for
But
the
I-
NFL.
Look, I think it's a totally bogus argument. I wouldn't
you.
be surprised at the end of the day. Maybe they get, I don't know, 0.1% or some minuscule amount. I hope they don't. The whole reason we're even having this discussion is because we have a huge amount of states that are essentially broke, that can't fund their schools, roads.
Good point. Good
And
point.
this is a Hail Mary on their part to try to to try to fund public expenditures. And I hope, for the sake of the states, they can pull this off without Adam Silver trying to reach into their back pocket and take any revenue they might be able to earn. off this.
It's like God reaching down and demanding 1% from the porn industry.
Oh my God.
I mean, it's the same thing. Let's be honest.
Listen, there is no God, but there is porn. Okay.
no, but you, no,
Truth,
but
the
you,
truth be
hey,
told,
By the way,
if
by the way, real quick, send all the hate letters and protests to Fifth Street Sports, not Nick Geber. There you go.
No, but I remember how popular. I remember that Artie Lang did a skit. This is how you know that there was so much gambling on fantasy football, because there was an announcer for the Giants. This guy was the absolute worst announcer on the radio, because he would drive the fantasy sports. In fantasy sports, you score by your player and that. He would drive the fantasy sports players so crazy. He was so terrible as an announcer. I remember there would be a play like Sims hands the ball to Meggett. Meggett's at the 40, at the 30, at the 25, 10, touchdown. No, he stepped out at the 1. He drove these guys crazy. He would drive me crazy on the radio. Meggett gets the ball. He's going to sneak up the middle. Touchdown. No, he stopped at the 1-inch line. Absolutely drove the fantasy football
Steelers
players
win.
crazy.
Oh wait, there's a flag.
No, because it matters like who scores. Like the guy would get the touchdown. He goes, he's at the 50, the 40, the 30, the 20, touchdown. No, he stepped out at the 5. He drove the players absolutely crazy. That's how you knew that there was so much betting
Yeah, right.
on fantasy football.
That's the point, guys. Is that it's opening up a whole new market. It's legalizing an underground market. It's opening up a whole new market that the leagues don't have, that they can now market to themselves. Rather than try to put your hands into the engine that is sports betting, Why don't you try to put your hands and market your product more towards sports bettors and find some way that you can go directly after those sports bettors? No one's stopping the NFL having their own book. Do it
Well,
that way.
I'll just make this point also, Nick. I haven't seen any. I've seen the 1% demand, and I've seen the union players also say, "Wait a minute, we want 1% of this." But I haven't seen anybody tell us what they're going to do with this 1%, other than enhance their own.
No, they're
their
going to
own
use it
riches.
for integrity enhancing measures.
Integrity,
The new
that's
Lamborghini, the junket to Phuket for the entire front office. I don't know what they're going to do. They're going to line their coffers so they can hire more lawyers so that they can cover up CTE even more or whatever it is they're doing. Look, the hypocrisy is disgusting. These people are awful. These leagues make so much money hands over fist. And yeah, there are teams that lose money. I understand that. But, we're talking about the mainstream sports.
By the way,
And I will say this. At least the NCAA, for as an insidious an organization that is, still doesn't support legalized gambling, sports betting. They are saying we don't.
Well,
want
that's
to,
the
we don't
official
want-
policy.
Yeah. But I mean,
they're evangelical to a certain
Yeah.
extent.
yeah,
Well, Brian,
and at
hang
least
on,
their
hang
policy,
on a
at least
second.
their policy is consistent.
Brian, what's your take on that? Because you got a good point. I remember.
I mean, it's a convenient position to take. If I know that my wife is about to give candy to my kids, it's easy for me to say I'm against candy or dessert because I know they're going to get it anyway.
Oh,
The,
yeah. So
uh,
now you get the free kudos. Yeah.
But if you've been against
Hey.
candy for 6 years and you're still against candy, I don't think
I got it.
I'm saying the NCAA is 100% in favor of gambling, and they get the convenience of being able to pretend like they're against it.
Wait a
Well,
minute.
well, the
wait,
NC
wait a second. Wait a second. Excuse me for a
Absolutely.
second.
Great
wait a
point,
minute.
great
wait a
point.
minute. I normally wouldn't do this in front of like the whole world, whatever. But you just said something that I think's kind of striking, and I think you need to back it up. You just said, Brian, that I think I heard you right. Publicly, the NCAA's stance is anti-gambling, but privately, you believe that they are for gambling. I think that requires some explanation.
Well, I think they are a professional sports league, just like every other professional sports league, although they are cloaked in the illusion of amateurism. But yeah, their product benefits from having as many eyeballs on it as possible, and the TV deals that they get, and other licensing deals would be microscopic compared to the numbers they're getting if it weren't for gambling. I mean, that's the reason. It's the reason we all turn on the TV, watch irrelevant basketball game on Tuesday night on ESPN or any other.
I just want to think, Brian, I'm going to argue with you, but you get a rebuttal on this. I just think you're wrong.
Okay.
Listen, I understand a lot of people
Yeah.
gamble on college football, but let's just be quite frank here. You live in a state that's football crazy, Oklahoma.
Sure.
I think you graduated from Alabama. Am I right on this? Which is that's like football mecca in a sense. When you get into states, especially like that, and I don't mean this to sound disrespectful, but that's essentially what that state's known for. When you say Alabama, you just generically say Alabama, they'll think Crimson Tide. They think they think the football team. And it used to be that way with Barry Switzer and the Oklahoma Sooners. That's a fact. I don't you can say whatever you want, but that's a fact. So what I'm saying to you is if there was no gambling in Oklahoma or Alabama and none of them gambled, they'd still draw in Norman and in whatever Tuscaloosa,
but-
whatever. They'd still
But let's-
sell out. Am I wrong?
Yeah, but do you think ESPN's going to air like UL Monroe against UL Lafayette? That's going to be on TV. Who's watching that?
Well,
Right?
yeah, but even the marquee schools they're not going to get they're not going to earn the same. They're going to have Nick Saban getting paid $8 million or
No way. Yep.
there's no way. It's the whole system they're a professional sports league, although they have the ability to pretend like they're amateurs when it's convenient. But they have they have all of the benefits of being a professional sports league. They have labor that costs them close to zero.
Yeah.
They have the ability to receive tax deductible donations. Wouldn't the Denver Nuggets love to be able to get a $10,000 tax deductible donation
Sure.
from
Yeah.
their fans.
Sure.
It's the ultimate racket.
It is the ultimate racket. The NCAA is an insidious organization that essentially promotes what I believe is modern day slavery for a lot of the
Please
players
sue us.
on there. I have
It's
two
so
kids
true.
that both played NCAA
Absolutely
athletics.
correct.
You know,
Despicable organization.
they make billions of dollars off the television rights of these
The
products.
bowl chairman's made millions of dollars.
And we are talking about, you know, the NFL wanting to put their hands in the pockets of sports bettors. I would suggest that I would say to the NCAA, I'm happy to give you a 0.25% integrity fee when you show some integrity and turn around and take those players and pay them at least a living wage.
That's a
for
very
the
good
work they do.
to tie the so-called integrity fee to some kind of
Yeah.
action.
I
I
mean,
think that's a fair. I think that's a
Because
fair
I mean the
debate.
and this is a whole topic, another topic of discussion. But I mean, you know, it's just atrocious.
But they're
what
getting
happens to
paid.
these-
They get scholarships.
That's
They get
absolute
a free
crap.
ride.
Right?
Yeah, that's such
They get a
bullshit,
free
Frank.
ride.
Let me tell you something. When I went to UCLA, and I graduated
No?
from UCLA, okay,
They don't get
You're a
that.
Bruin. You're
I'm a Bruin. I went in late. I'd gone through the army already, so I was a little older when I went through my undergraduate work. So I was able to see things maybe with a bit more mature of an eye. I will never forget the very last course I took was a music appreciation class because I was
Oh,
3
man,
units
this
shy.
sounds like
Wow.
a male
I was 3 units shy, and
Music
of
appreciation.
graduation. I took this class called music appreciation, and let me tell you something. This was an exceptionally difficult class. Okay, the professor was really into music, classical music. You had to really learn. I mean, this was not easy, and you know,
It wasn't basket weaving.
no, and the class was absolutely stacked with football players from the UCLA program who obviously thought the same thing, that this was a very easy class that they could take. And I got to know some of them. Some of these kids couldn't spell their names. Some of these kids were totally incapable of writing an English sentence and have it be coherent. But they were very good football players. And I would suggest to you that for many schools, particularly the big money schools, the schools that really enjoy the benefits of the NCAA, you know, bracket, that the value of an education for many of these people is zero. Number one. Number two is they go and they recruit a lot of kids from neighborhoods, and we're on this topic now. We may as well see it through. We'll go recruit a lot of kids from neighborhoods, kids that normally wouldn't otherwise go to college, kids that are responsible for supporting their families, or kids that have families and they have to support them. And they take them and they put them in school because they're good football players or basketball players or baseball players or whatever it is. And they don't give them a way to support their families back home. So a lot of them get into positions where they have to sell autographs or do all these sorts of things that the NCAA frowns upon. I would suggest to you that paying a living wage, I'm not talking about paying a college player $1 million for that. You cap it. You know, you're going to play college football and it can be staggered based on the size of the program. You're going to pay college football for, what is it, a AAA bowl team, right, or an A1? I don't know what the what the level is. You get $50,000 a year. You get your education. You get everything taken care of. You get $50,000 a year as payment, which you can send back to your family or put it into a retirement fund, or whatever it is that you have to do. And it's just done, and that's it. Because if they get injured a lot of the times, okay, these kids get injured. They don't have any pro prospects at the end of the day. Only a very small percentage
Right.
of them make it to the pros. Allow them, at least afford them the opportunity to be able to actually get an education rather than worrying about taking care of their parents back home or their families or their kids that they have or whatever it is. It's a vicious circle, but there is so much money there that's what the way it should be done. Now, look, I accept the fact that the value of a football player for Alabama or for one of the big schools is much higher than that of the guy that's playing for I don't know, even though it's a D1 school, maybe it's not a particularly great one. I mean, but so maybe the ones that don't have the big D1 programs, maybe they give them a lot less because they have a lot less money. But whatever the chart is, the money has to be. Some of that money has to be distributed. I'm not in favor of paying college athletes millions of dollars at all. They should definitely have ownership of their likeness. That's for sure. But pay them a living wage. so that we can all at least watch them play and know that, they're taken care of at the end of the day.
Well, I totally agree. The difficult thing that I think we're going to encounter, and I think we're moving towards the situation that you described, but we also have to wrestle with the concept of Title IX. And if we're going to pay a football player $50,000, what happens to the softball player or women's volleyball player? How do we square Title IX with that?
So I'm going to suggest to you that we pull our heads out of our asses and we look at reality in the face. Okay, is it softball and volleyball and bowling do not drive the revenue that the big sports do for the universities? We have to face reality here, and the reality is that men's college sports are the drivers of the revenue. You generally don't see them going into the inner cities to recruit a volleyball player who has a family that she has to take care of back home. Okay? It generally doesn't work that way.
Well, college basketball for women is good and big in college. Connecticut, Notre Dame, those are big games now.
Well, and if there's money that they're deriving through a fee that they get from sports betting in the NCAA, then that's where that money should go, okay? So I think you need to separate the NCAA from the professional leagues if we're going to actually make that differentiation and say maybe a 1% integrity fee or a quarter or an eighth or whatever it is on college sports isn't an unreasonable thing as long as that money goes to the collegiate athletes in terms of actual money for them, rather than, we're going to get a new building for the program, or we're going to have a new restaurant, a new massage room, or whatever the hell it is. It's a problem, because the bottom line is, guys, and I said this earlier, the college athletic ladder here, or the ladder of sports in this country, is that for almost all sports, the college system is the minor leagues. And that needs to change. But if that changes, it's going to gut college sports. It will not be the same as what it is today. By that I mean we need an NFL B league and an NFL C league, and maybe just like in other leagues, like for example soccer, you've got the championship and you've got the first division, the second division. You've got all these sort of lower leagues where people work their way through, and they do have that somewhat in basketball. That needs to be expanded. But I mean, it was only recently in basketball that you couldn't come in as out of high school. I don't think you still can, right? You have to take a year off, right?
Yeah, it depends on sport, but yeah.
But I mean, that's nonsense. If I'm a talented 18-year-old coming out of high school and I can hold my own with any professionals on the field, I should be able to go play.
Well, I think that you made a lot of excellent points that probably everybody here, certainly on this panel, and probably a lot of listeners would agree with. Should college athletes be compensated for their labor, sacrifice, risk? Yes. Yes. I mean, we completely agree. Is the NCAA corrupt? Yes. Yes. But let's not conflate what I call very these are arguments based on justice. And now I'll backtrack. If you were to rewind this tape, you talked about let's deal with reality. Those are your words 4 or 5 minutes ago. And let me give you some reality, Mr. Gieber and Mr. Perez and Mr. Oklahoma. Let me give you some reality. Have you ever considered the following? That perhaps by partnering and enabling and empowering the pro sports leagues, the NCAA, with this 1% fee and making them full partners, if you have them totally on board with the ship, does that potentially, instead of creating an adversarial relationship as exists today, as it's existed for 5 or 6 decades, as long as I've been alive, which is a long time, having them as partners in promoting sports gambling. Imagine all 32 teams in the NFL and all the other pro sports leagues promoting at the stadium, saying, we don't get a piece of the action. We don't want to. Imagine them promoting it instead. If you're giving them a little piece of the action, does that potentially create so much more of a handle, so much more of what I'll call You call, and Brian, who's with us in spirit anyway, listening to my voice, dead money. When people are seeing all the, oh, I'll bet that, on the Cleveland Cavaliers, I want to bet $20. All those $20 bets add up. You cannot have an adversarial relationship with leagues that are. Wait a minute, let me finish because I'm like getting really excited here. And then Brian, it's all yours. I'll shut up. These are sports leagues that have so much money, so much power. You don't want them as enemies. Let's empower them. Let's partner with them.
Fuck am I saying?
That's your description sounds like Nick's mob analogy that he used.
Yeah, exactly.
I'd hate to see something bad happen.
Should I crawl under the sofa here and hide?
But I'll say this: why? Okay, if this is such a great idea, why has no other country that has professional gambling, which is basically every other country in the world, why have they not had the need to pay off the leagues that they're betting on?
Because Brian, here we go. Most countries do not have leagues that have quite the monopoly on the sport as they do here in America. By that I mean, just look at soccer, for example. It's like this in England. It's like this all over Europe and the rest of the world. You got the Premier League. Yes, they're the big 800-pound gorilla, no doubt about it. But you also have the Football League. You have League One. You have the Championship. You have League Two, League Three, League Four, blah, blah. You go all the way down to the conference leagues. The sport is the sport, and the leagues are the various leagues, and you can bet on any of them. And they don't have a monopoly. In America here, it's the NFL, and God knows if somebody tries to create the XFL. They do have the new one coming up, right?
Please help us.
They're quashed. They're squashed. These monopolies are not just what we say. We're not just saying it flippantly. I mean, they're actual legal monopolies. We know that they've had legislative carve-outs to allow them to do it, right? Isn't it? Major League Baseball has a carve-out about monopolies.
Right, antitrust exemption.
Yeah, antitrust exemptions, right. I mean, it's hypocrisy, guys. And Nolan, you can make whatever excuses you want for your buddies in the front office. I guess as long as they send you hookers and blow, you don't care. Life is good.
Well, that's true. You're right about that. By the way, I want the hookers, and then the blow can I can do without the blow. Just double the hookers.
I just think the whole thing's ridiculous. And at the end of the day, we're talking about states that are desperate for revenue. That's the whole reason they're doing this. If I were the states and I have sovereign immunity, I would look at the leagues and say, hey, sorry, thanks, but no thanks.
Yeah.
Wait,
where were you?
Wait. I'm going to get angry here for a second. Just a second. I'm going to call you out. Do you see my finger, sir? Do you see
yes.
me talking to you? Wait a minute.
Yes.
Listen. Oklahoma Brian, I want everybody to understand something. Oklahoma Brian is a professional, successful sports bettor. He's a man I have great respect for. Wait a minute. I really have great respect for him. But you, sir, are protecting your own interest. Now, let's just take an alternative universe, and you are representing the Oklahoma City Thunder, right?
Okay.
You work for the Oklahoma City Thunder, and now you've got to take a position on this exact same question I'm asking you. So are you telling me that you would sit there and say the same thing if you were representing the Oklahoma City or the Kansas City, whatever the city, and you're trying to protect their interests? By the way, which they're constitutionally, legally entitled to do. It's not as though that they're making shit up. They are entitled to protect their interests as Coca-Cola would do, as Apple would do, as Starbucks would do, as any other entity would do that is a billion-dollar enterprise. Why would you, Brian, have any, it's a loaded question, would you have a different position if you work for the Oklahoma City Thunder or you own that team, sir?
I suppose if I worked for the Thunder and I thought there was someone stupid enough to buy this argument, yeah, I mean, I would I would continue to make the argument. But, imagine that Coney Island tries to charge 1% on people that bet on the hot dog contest.
Yes.
Good.
By the way, we're going to have extensive coverage of that.
Good comeback.
Oh, Nathan's, yeah.
Yeah. But actually, I just want to point out, Nolan, You mentioned the word Apple during that discussion.
Yes.
You've got to send your $5 over to Cupertino. I mean, it's the same thing. Look, it's like Apple saying, "Well, we make the best cell phones. Everybody wants our cell phones. Anytime you buy a cell phone now, you should have to pay us money, whether it's our phone or not." Now, if you use our technology, that's one thing, but they're not.
Again, you're conflating.
I'm not conflating anything.
No, I appreciate what I call,
I'm right and you're wrong. It's that simple.
Wait a second. But we're talking about an enormous amount. This is not just like periphery money. It's not just something that it's not getting pom-poms or programs or popcorn. We're talking about something. Hear me out, gentlemen. What I'm about to say. We're not talking about just pom-poms and popcorn. We're talking about something that fundamentally changes the nature of the way people watch and cheer and buy tickets and follow teams.
Okay, but I'm going to say the same
thing.
thing. But hold on.
It changes the entire sports
Yes.
fan dynamic.
And so
are they
does-
not entitled to have some voice in that, sir?
And so does Talk Sport Radio. It's changed the way people interact with their football teams, their basketball teams, their professional sports teams since it came out in the 50s. Do the leagues deserve a piece of the profits that the radio stations make for airing sports talk radio? Because that changed the way people interact with their sports teams. How about the newspapers when they started printing about the baseball back in the day when it was in the bubblegum things? I mean, come on. Should the newspapers give basketball or baseball a piece of their action because they talk about it? It's the fact that they talk about it that's increasing the popularity, which means more people want to watch it and interact with that sport. That means they can charge more for their sponsors, more for their gate admission, more for their hot dogs and whatever crap they want to throw down your throat. That's where they benefit from it, not from putting your hand in the sauce pocket. That's bullshit.
But now, let's
Put
think
that
about
in your
this.
pipe and smoke
Now you're in South.
Give me the pipe.
But now you're in South Bend. Okay, now this is legalized, completely legalized. There's big money being bet, and you have Notre Dame plus 3.5. Okay, didn't used to matter a lot of times, but now it matters to everybody. You have Notre Dame plus 3.5, and they're going for a game-tying field goal with no time left. Now, if they make that field goal, that game's going into overtime, and you might lose your bet with 3.5. How many people are going to say, well, we love Notre Dame, and that's our school, but boy, I hope he misses his field goal.
Just a second. Let me.
I hope he misses his field goal because they're only going to lose by 3, and we got 3.5.
Let me say something, Frank. I'm gonna go back and I'm gonna show my age. Brian, are you listening to this?
I am.
You interrupt
Always.
me, and I want you to jump through that screen. Wait a minute. Wait. I know, Brian. I want you to strangle me if I'm wrong. I want you to jump through that window, take your 2 hands. You see that? And I want you to strangle me, okay? If I'm wrong. This is a true story. Paul Rozelle was the NFL commissioner back in the 1960s.
Pete Rozelle.
I said Paul.
Pete.
Excuse me. Pete Rozelle was the NFL commissioner in the 1960s, and he was asked about sports gambling 50 years ago, and he said, "Why are you against sports gambling?" And I've never been able to counter his answer. Here's what he said. He said, "I don't want to have." In a fourth quarter game, an NFL team is favored by 7. They've got the ball and they're on the 3-yard line of the opponent, and they could punch in the touchdown to cover. I don't want everybody in fucking Shea Stadium or Giant Stadium or the Veterans Stadium or FK Stadium booing the home team because they didn't cover the spread. And you talk about integrity. There's your answer. The objective of athletes, the objective of coaches, the goal of teams is to win the game. It is not to cover the spread. Yes, I've gambled all my life, but that cannot influence the decision-making of a quarterback, of a coach.
No, I didn't
of a
say the
whatever.
quarterback.
And so what I'm saying is Pete Rozelle correct that his concerns that you'll get home fans booing the home team because they don't cover the spread?
He's not correct, and I'll tell you why. First of all, when you said, I'm going to go back a long time, tell your story, I thought you were going to say you were the guy that when the Hindenburg blew up said, "Oh, the humanity." The humanity. But apparently you didn't say that.
Oh, I remember that film, yeah.
Maybe that was you.
I'm not
Frank,
quite
but-
as old as you, Nick. Go ahead.
But
No, that's
You got stuff on Claudius the Sixth.
yes.
I mean,
But the reason that you're wrong, the both of you are wrong about this, is because
everybody's wrong, but Nick.
it's just numbers. More people are going to go see the Green Bay Packers play because they are fans of the Green Bay Packers. That's just the way it is. People are going to bet on sports, but it's not going to be 100% of the people that go through the turnstiles to see the team play. Those are going to be fans of the games. Look, I would lie to all of you if I told you that I didn't bet against Liverpool every now and then.
That's your team.
That's my team. That doesn't mean that if I was at Anfield watching them, I wouldn't be cheering for them to win the game, because I would be. There's two sides to me. There's the fan of the team, and then there's a guy that likes to place a little sports bet every now and then. The number of people that take the sports betting to the level that you guys take it, I think, as a percentage, is so small that it wouldn't move the meter for the discussion about fans that watching Green Bay Packers play, screaming for them to miss the field goal. It's just not real. Not that many people as a percentage are going to be betting on sports, and I think we have to recognize that, and you have to understand that. And I think if you do, and you recognize the fact that a fan is a fan is a fan, and a guy that's betting on sports is a guy that's betting on sports, then we can segregate these arguments. And Pete Rozelle, who may be alive or may be dead, I don't know, can go back to the medieval times where he belongs.
wow.
Can we bet on if he's alive or not?
Yeah, I don't know if Pete Rozelle's still alive.
Is he still alive?
Dead.
He's dead. So don't wish to disparage the dead. But he's been reincarnated in the medieval times. I don't know. But anyway, so look, I think that we have different opinions, and I'm getting tired, guys. All this yelling and screaming.
Tired.
We were going we were going to talk about the Vegas
Are you
Valley.
ready to concede? Are you conceding, sir?
I'm not conceding.
You're
I know
conceding.
I'm right.
It sounds like a white flag. You're conceding
No, I'm
the
not
argument.
conceding anything.
Thank you very much.
No.
By the way,
No.
I need to have like flags here. Like,
Yeah,
I
no.
need a flag plant, like Man on the Moon, like one small step for man.
Do you think? As I look on here, I can bet on. For example, I could have bet any sports.eu right now, and I could bet on presidential candidates or senatorial candidates. Should they get a piece of what's bet on them too?
Yeah. Well, hey, what happens when you have a 16 parlay with 4 different sports? How do we decide who gets the money on that?
Oh, yeah.
It's impossible. It's ridiculous.
Exactly.
It's impossible. These are ancillary discussions and agreements between people that have nothing to do with the sports league, except they are the topic of the discussion.
Let me have 30 seconds to close out my point. Of course, I agree with all of you gentlemen in the sense of it does hurt professional sports handicappers. Yeah, percent to pay to the state or pay to the integrity fee. So, is there hypocrisy in all the leagues? Yes, of course. Do I want to see the owners of teams get richer? No. To the contrary, I'm a populist. I'm completely opposed. But what I'm saying to you, gentlemen, is are they entitled to at least ask for a percentage? I think they're entitled to at least from a starting point of negotiations. And I wouldn't mind again having them on our side when it comes to full-time, full-bore sports. But I think it's a good thing to have them on our side. So I will say that I think that you gentlemen are a bit ideological, but let's get into the real world. If you throw them a little bone, it may be good for all of us.
Forget the bone. They're getting the bone because
They're
we're able
giving
to
us
bet.
the bone.
Forget the throwing them a bone. Their audience is going to increase because there's legalized gambling. That's like us right now, all wearing Apple shirts and all that because they're nice shirts, but they all say buy an Apple phone and I love iPhones, and then an iPhone says, oh, we got to charge you for using our name. What do you mean charge us? We're giving you these.
Right.
The audience is going to increase just because there's more betting. They should be thanking the sports betting thing, not trying to charge them.
And there's one more argument
Thank
I
you.
want to make against this idea of letting the big leagues get their tentacles directly into the gambling world. They will do to the gambling world what they've done today, what they did to daily fantasy sports.
Which is?
If you let them get in, it's like a cancer. They will take over.
Explain what you mean by that.
Well, the idea that if the NFL gets a piece of the action of a sports book, it's only going to be a time until there is the official NFL sports book and the official NHL and NBA sports book. And all of the others are pushed out of the equation.
They're
They're
going
going
to
to-
jade the fans. They're going to jade the fans.
They're
by
going to
doing it.
jade the fans. They're going to use their marketing and media power. They're going to use all that extra money they got. And they're going to squash the competition. And they're going to end up owning those businesses and that market. This isn't a function of them wanting a piece of someone else's business. This is a function of them wanting to take over somebody else's business. This is what I mean when I say it's a mafia-like protection racket that they run, because that is the end game. DFS, do you remember the times when you could turn on the TV and every 5 seconds there was a commercial about daily fantasy
Oh, it was
sports?
sickening.
It was
The
FanDuel
commercials were
and
awful.
whatever the other one
Yeah.
was, right? And
Whatever
the
they were.
reason that they could afford to do that is because they had massive money behind them. And the marketplace for any other DFS site to be successful was zero. There were very few there was no competition. It was the two big DFS sites that had all the Silicon Valley money in it. They had all the NFL money in it, directly invested people. And as a result, there was no competition. Do you really want that in sports betting? Do you really want us to say, hey, you can no longer go to betanysports.com or .eu. You got to go to William Hill because, and I'm no disrespect to William Hill, just using this as an example. You got to go to William Hill because they are so big, they own the marketplace. And then it's only a matter of time until the NFL owns William Hill and they say no one else can take lines on our product. It's exclusive only to William Hill. That's what's coming next if you let these bastards get in, because that's what they do, because they're savvy business folks. They've got teams of lawyers and lobbyists and everything else, and that's where this is going in the long run. They're going to own the market.
It's going to be interesting when it's legal everywhere. It's going to jade so many fathers and kids and I remember me because when gambling started, I was the most diehard St. Louis Cardinal fan you could imagine. When I was a little kid and in Game 7, when Lolich was pitching against Gibson, 68. When I ran home from school to watch that Game 7. When that ball went over Flood's head, and all of a sudden the Cardinals lost 4-1. Shannon hit a homer in the ninth to make it 4-1. I cried. I cried for 2 days. I used to look at Lou Brock stolen bases and
Wasn't 'cause you just
Javier
lost your lunch money on a bet?
I knew everybody I cried for 2 days. Now, 20 years later, when I'm able to bet, and my Cardinals hit a 2-run homer to beat the Dodgers, I cried also because I had the Dodgers. I could give a shit about the Cardinals.
but
You know, because I had 400 on the Dodgers. That's going to happen to a lot of fathers. So my son was in my car with me, okay, and he was 9 years old. And he said, Dad, aren't you happy? Look at that. The Cardinals just hit a 2-run homer. We won. I said, well, not really, son, not really. I said, because we're not going to Disneyland. I said, we're not because I had the Dodgers. That's going to happen as this goes all around. You don't, Brian, isn't that true? Here's a diehard
Jack in the Box, four tacos for
from
$1.
whatever state. The next thing you know, it's infiltrated, and the father's got like 500 against his team. And his team wins, and he looks at his son. He goes, "Dad, well, what we do? Let's high five." And I said, "No, high five and shit."
I think we've gone almost a complete hour, guys. So I think we're going to wrap it up. I wanted to talk about the Vegas value proposition because talking about another group of people that have their hands in the pockets of a really of the people that provide them with their lifeblood. We're talking about the casinos and the big chains and how much they charge for resort
We're going to
fees
tear
and
down
all
the
that.
establishment.
It's the same. It's very much the same discussion, but I think we'll hold that one for next week. We'll do that one actually on the air next week. But I really enjoyed the discussion, guys. Nolan, I really appreciate everything you've said.
Do you really,
you're
sir?
dead
Do you
wrong.
really-
I couldn't disagree with you anymore. And it's a fool's argument, but we still love you. All right.
A fool's army of one.
Fool's argument.
Argument, okay, whatever.
Anyway, now let's wrap it up. Final thoughts, Nolan.
Well, I just enjoyed the discussion, gentlemen. We have a lot to discuss. This is what's cool about this. Wait till the NFL starts. Wait till the World Cup starts. Wait till all these other. We got so much going on here in Las Vegas. We haven't even touched on Las Vegas lifestyle things, which I'd love to discuss, like one of the things about, is Las Vegas a great place to visit? Where are the best restaurants to go? Where is the best place to pick up a girl? I mean, all of that stuff. I just can't wait to get all that and learn from all the experts here and the guests that we have. So, we're just scratching the surface, right, Frank?
Mine was, yeah, but I wanted to ask Brian, because Brian's been putting his picks on Fifth Street. I think, Brian, is it Twitter that you put them on?
Right.
What?
Yeah, I post them on Twitter for Fifth Street, right?
The people should really stay tuned to that. This stuff is great stuff. I mean, they're getting some of the best handicapping bets and everything for absolutely free just by going to Fifth Street Twitter. They really should.
All I can say is look at what we're posting, and the wins and losses. Yeah, I can't control whether we win or lose, but I can tell you this: look at our closing line value. Look at what we post on our Twitter account. Look at where these games are closing. That's the real indicator of.
For sure, it's great stuff, you guys. It's great, and he's giving it away. I mean, this stuff on Wager Talk or other handicapping sites would charge a ton of money.
Yeah,
a ton of money. But
hey, I'll tell you what, guys. I had a great time, Nick. By this time next week, we're going to have our beverage endorsement, right?
Absolutely. Absolutely, we're going to have it. It's called-
and we got our tester over here. We got to start cutting Nolan off at about $3.50 every afternoon.
I will not drink Merlot. I don't care how much Merlot pays us. I'm not drinking Merlot.
At $3.50, once the arguments get heated, we got to say last call, Nolan. That's it.
No, actually,
Last call. I'm just getting
Nolan,
started.
my
Happy hour starts at 4:00.
My final thought, Nolan, is just to refocus you on the argument about
He's refocusing
sporting.
me. Go
And
ahead.
this is the last thing I'm going to say because we're out of time. I'm now going to charge you, even though you're bringing your own booze in here. I'm going to charge you $5 for every glass of wine you drink in our studio.
Oh my!
So there you go.
Can you?
Even though it's your wine you're bringing.
Yeah. Do you take credit?
Yes, sure. We'll
All
take
right.
credit.
Good. Just
We'll
put it
take-
on my tab.
Okay, Frank will pay. All right. Well, I hope you enjoyed the show, Brian. Thanks so much. It's always a pleasure. We'll be back on the.
Hey,
end
Brian,
next
can I
week.
borrow some money?
Ryan, I'll call you in just a while, all right?
All right.
Sounds
We'll be
good.
back with you next week. Don't forget Friday to tune in to Fifth Street Soccer, 1 p.m. Pacific time. You'll see a lot of our picks up there. And, of course, on Tuesday, big kickoff in the Champions League as we start the semifinals if you follow soccer. All right, that's it. Thanks, guys. Till next week. Thanks a lot, Boggs. Great job. Bye.